Thank you, Roy. I must first of all thank the organizers, transport events led by my good friend, Rory, the managing director, and the sponsors, Balas Nadam, for making this occasion possible. I am discussing the challenges and future opportunities for ports and shipping in West Africa. And though I have been to almost all the ports in West Africa, I will concentrate mainly on ports in Anglophone West Africa, although my conclusions are the same for both Anglophone and Francophone countries in the sub-region. It is a known fact that the best form of investment in ports in West Africa, like in other developing countries, taking into consideration, one, the financial position of governments, and two, the required level of investment to turn ships into third generation ports, capable of efficiently handling containers and container vessels in the ports, is via concessioning, notably build, operate, and transfer BOT agreements for an agreed number of years and well-negotiated conditions. From 2001, after the adoption of the World Bank Port Toolkit recommendation, that port concessioning is the best way of investing in ports, opportunities for investment have led to major international terminal operators entering into private-public partnership with governments and port authorities to develop container terminals in their ports, investing in port infrastructure and equipment like STS cranes, RTGs, and the where's mine? Whoa. Excuse me, I'm just trying to share my screen. Sure. Investing in port infrastructure and equipment like STS cranes, RTGs, harbor cranes, and reach stackers. These are some of the list of concession agreements that we have seen in the coast of West Africa since 2001. It gives you the country, the port, and the concessionaire. And it goes without saying that the main concessionaires along the coast have been Bolloré and APMT. While these PPP arrangements are supposed to offer win-win solution, socio-economic benefits to grantors and concessionaires alike, success have varied from country to country or port to port, or in some countries from terminal to terminal. From a study recently conducted, while port concessions have improved the fortunes of some port authorities, others are suffering today as a result of the concessions they signed or were made to sign. Gentlemen, how beneficial port concessions has been to a port authority depends on one, the conditions of the agreement signed, and also who handled the negotiations with the concessionaire, which is very important. By conditions, I'm referring to some specific clauses in the concession agreement, like one, the concession period. For how many years the concession is going to run? 20, 25, 35. These are the ranges for concessions have been signed to last. Some 20, some 25, some 35. Two, the scope of the concession. Are we concessioning only container traffic or the container terminals or the same, or the container or the whole port? Three, exclusivity clause. Are we excluding the operations of the container terminal only, or the whole port or even beyond the port. There is a particular port in West Africa where the concession agreement says that within 35 miles radius, nobody can operate a container terminal, whether the country's fortunes improve or not. That is the concession agreement signed. And fourthly, commercial terms or concession fee. This is the crux of the issue. Down payment. How much the concessionaire gives to the port authority as down payment. Royalties paid. Land rentals. These are the life of the concession agreement. And these are what the port authority is going for. And this is why the governments intend or decide to concession out the ports. You see the levels of down payments that have been paid over the period in West African sub-region. By who handled negotiations, I'm referring to the institution that led the negotiations with the foreign terminal operator or concessionaire. This has been a big problem for port authorities in the sub-region. In some countries, while some port authorities were allowed to do the negotiations themselves, in some countries, some established state institutions representing governments were in charge of the negotiations. In some countries, the ministry responsible for ports were in charge of the negotiations. And it was clear from a recent study that PPP arrangements benefited port authorities in countries where port authority itself did the negotiations, while in countries where other institutions led negotiations, today their port authorities are in distress. My port authority gained enough because it handled the port concession itself. If you go to a country like Sierra Leone or Liberia, this is not the case. And their port authorities are lamenting, because if you go to Sierra Leone, for instance, down payments, royalties, everything goes to the government and not to the port authority. In Monrovia, a similar situation is. So you see, the port authorities themselves today don't have money, while the concessionaire has a lot of money. I must say, however, that despite the mentioned challenges, there exist opportunities for port and shipping in West Africa if the investments being made in port by foreign terminal operators are anything to go by. My friend Mr. Samara showcased how much has been invested in Tema. And I tell you, Tema is reaping the benefits of these investments. Productivity has increased by 250% in Tema. Look at the other ports, you see how beneficial these investments have been. Bigger drafts, better equipment to handle containers, and better IT systems that free containers from staying in port instead of leaving the port, instead of staying in the port. Most ports have benefited. Port infrastructure have benefited. Port service quality has benefited. Direct employment, and most of all, community social responsibilities. Talking of community social responsibility, this is Mr. Samara's port. I took this picture 7:30 this morning. It shows the beautiful port exit that has been created by MPS concessionaire in Tema. I've gone through all the ports from Dakar to Cameroon. I haven't seen such beautiful port access anywhere that you can see in Tema. This is the result of the good concession that is in Tema and what the port community in Tema is benefiting from. That is what we call a good concession. The cranes Mr. Samara has already showcased. Participants, these port concessions must lead to a win-win socio-economic benefits to all stakeholders, port authorities, terminal operators, importers, and the port communities at large. Port authorities who are deemed to have the expertise, rather than politicians, must be made to control the negotiations of these concession agreements for the expected maximum benefits from port concessions to be realized. Thank you.